This is the story of the ancient Greek hero Heracles, also known as Hercules in Roman mythology and cult worship. If you're new here, I'm Julia. I have a master's in ancient Greek and Latin, or classics, and I used to have a huge platform on TikTok, but that app gave me absolutely no help when I was targeted by white supremacists and then by hackers. Been talking about Heracles, and in the last video we explained how he accidentally killed his wife Megara and his children because the goddess Hera hated him from being an illegitimate son of her husband Zeus. So we left off, and Heracles needs to purify himself for the sin of murdering his family. He's instructed by the oracle at Delphi, who is actually being a puppet for Hera at the time, who instructs him to go and basically be a servant to his cousin, King Eurystheus. This is where we get to the labors of Heracles. Woo! In order to atone for his sins, Heracles must carry out a number of tasks set by Eurystheus. Now, Heracles was originally assigned 10 labors to complete.
Let's go!
But it doesn't go quite as smoothly as that. Now, a lot of the tasks for Heracles involves the killing or the capture of some kind of animal or plant. So when the local population of nearby Nemea is being terrorized by a lion, Heracles goes woo over to Nemea. Once he has arrived, he wanders around until he finds this little boy, who informs Heracles that if Heracles is able to capture the lion and kill it within 30 days, that the town will sacrifice another lion to the god Zeus. If Heracles was unsuccessful during the 30 days, or if he died, then the little boy would actually have to sacrifice himself. Now, Heracles is very me Heracles me smash. He's a bit of a brute, but he won't let this happen. Eventually, he finds the lion, and he starts shooting at it with his bow and arrow. But every time the arrows hit the lion, they just go ba-ding and like bounce straight off of this fur. This is because the lion is a magical lion with impenetrable fur. So Heracles is like, that's not gonna work. Eventually, after stalking it for a little while, he's able to back it into a cave. One part of Heracles' classic iconography is that he walks around with a big club. He uses this club to smash the lion over the head. Heracles is then able to wrap his huge arms around this lion and basically strangle it to death. There are many versions about how this happens. Sometimes the lion bites one of his fingers off, and sometimes he's able to use his arrows to shoot inside the mouth of the lion. Anyway, lion dies. Great. But Heracles needs to prove that he has done this, so he tries to skin the lion to get its fur. But impenetrable fur, right? So he's trying to use his knife to skin the animal, and it is just not working. Then he tries to do it with a rock, he tries to sharpen his knife, nothing's working. Eventually the goddess Athena notices that he's kind of failing, and she comes down and she informs Heracles that he actually needs to use either one of the lion's teeth or its claws in order to skin. To take the skin off and make a little lion's pelt. Well, actually a big one. So the first task, easy peasy, slay the Nemean Lion.
Wow.
From this point forward, Heracles is almost always wearing the lion pelt. It becomes part of his permanent iconography. So he's done it. He's slain the Nemean Lion within the 30 days. But he also had to prove to King Eurystheus that he was able to complete the first task. And he actually brings the lion carcass into the palace and shows it to him. King Eurystheus is terrified. Not only was Heracles able to complete this task relatively easily, he's also not afraid of bringing, animal carcasses up to him. Heracles is then forbidden from coming into the city and has to just prove that he's completed a task outside the city gates. Labor of Heracles number 2. Slay the Lernean Hydra. Now Heracles has to go down here to Lerna, where the terrifying Lernean Hydra lives. Now this beast is a little bit different because it was created solely for the purpose of killing Heracles. That means the terrifying monster was actually raised by Hera the goddess. She's really got a grudge. So the Lernean Hydra, what is it? Now we've all seen Disney's Hercules. You know that big monster with like many snaky heads? It lives in a swamp. Now Heracles, he starts chopping off these heads with his sword, thinking surely that's going to be enough. But alas, just like in Disney's Hercules, every time one snaky head gets chopped off, 2 more snaky heads comes out of the wound, and the monster kind of grows exponentially. So when Heracles realizes that that is not working, he gets his nephew Iolaus to come and help him out. Together they devise a plan where Heracles would chop off a snaky head, and then his nephew would come along with the torch and use the fire to cauterize the wound so that 2 more snaky heads couldn't come out. So hilariously, when Hera realizes that Heracles is kind of succeeding, she sends down a little crab to go and bite or pinch at Heracles It's more like a giant crab, but Heracles is totally unfazed, and all he has to do is just stomp on it, and it dies. It was just trying its best, you guys. Anyway, Hera, to reward the crab for his efforts, actually turns him into a constellation, and that becomes the zodiac sign Cancer. Anyway, eventually Heracles succeeds at chopping off and cauterizing all of the heads of the Hydra. Or in some versions, there's one immortal head in the middle of the snaky heads, and then Heracles is able to chop that one off. Anyway, either way, the Hydra dies, and he has successfully completed the second labor. Now, the Hydra actually has poisonous blood, so what Heracles does then is he dips his arrows in the poisonous Hydra blood for later use. Make sure you're following along for more on the labors of Heracles.